Hey, welcome to the super nitpicky comparison video. Quick note, because we have Haruhime as a character and she has a particular profession, I will not be saying the profession properly during the video because the algorithm is very smart and can hear in on that word. So I'm going to be using either euphemisms or shortening the word. Gotta play that YouTube game. But anyway, yeah guys, thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L. Hope you're having a great day. Today I'm bringing you a DanMachi or dungeon girl, like is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? A comparison video. This time specifically we're looking through the content of mostly episode 9, a little bit of episode 8, and talking about the differences between the anime and the original novel. We're going to be going into the rhetoric of the novel and the rhetoric of the anime, and we're going to be talking about the changes that have come out because of how the anime has adapted some hard parts of the DanMachi narrative. So I hope you're ready to get into this one because there's a lot. So we're going to be starting in episode 8 because I want to show you how the anime removing small details changes the weight of particular scenes in episode 9. Getting right into it, right during Aisha telling Belle about their plans for Haruhime, there are some changes. First big one is that Belle is told specifically about the part where they are going to seal Haruhime's soul and split Haruhime's soul in multiple pieces. They ignored this detail in the anime, instead giving Belle a wide overview. This would later affect a conversation that he would have had with Ishtar. The next detail they skip is one that has to do with the central theme of the book, the role of a lady of the night in a hero's story. Here's an extract that would occur after Aisha says that they want to take down Freya with Haruhime's power. Here's Belle's narration. History repeats itself. There's always a connection to the past. I come to a rather cold conclusion. Then Belle says, but Haruhime's power? She's just... Aisha interrupts with, some low-ranking prosti, is that what you're going to say? And then she reminds Belle of the beating that he got. So two things about this line and how it was adapted. One, it removes the point of inner turmoil that Belle is going through. This late in the game, he's still fixated on Haruhime's status, and the book is constantly reminding you of her status. Secondly, is the removal of the second theme, that is, the history repeats itself line. See, right before this paragraph, Belle recalled a story that he and Haruhime shared about a genie, the night they met. The problem here is that DanMachi's narrative is constantly invoking the past. It's in DanMachi's very DNA, you could argue. For instance, DanMachi is a story of gods renowned in history meeting with mortals at its base. Heck, even in this story, a big point is Haruhime and Belle bonding over past stories of heroes. At its base, DanMachi's narrative is heavily connected to the events that happened earlier. So keep that in mind because as we go through this video, you'll see that a few of the omissions revolve around something of the past and a few revolve around Haruhime's status. Another episode 8 change before we get going. Aisha specifically tells Belle that Ishtar promised to return Haruhime's soul after Freya is gone, to which Mikoto called her out on the impossibility of that working, because it would be very hard to return all shards of the Killing Stone to the same place after a prolonged war. The chances of a single shard being missing would doom the girl forever. Anyway, all this happened right before Aisha's flashback. Still in episode 8 though, they skipped a small detail about the Amazons. The Amazons were opposed to the Freya Familia war, but after Aisha's beating, they fell in line with the kill Haruhime plan. I guess since we're talking about the Amazons here, I'll just let you know another little detail about the Amazons that was skipped during the actual events of the episode. A big thing that's going on with Aisha throughout all of this, and you can kind of tell that she has some kind of affection for Haruhime, is that Aisha is constantly balancing a scale that would break her heart should either side fall. That was a direct line from the novel. That scale is specifically one that weighs Haruhime against the well-being of her younger Amazonian siblings, or her adopted siblings. In other words, the other Amazonians in Ishtar's familia. The thing is, after Aisha got beat down as badly as she did, Ishtar threatened Aisha with the possibility that Ishtar would mess with the other younger Amazonians if Aisha ever stepped out of line. So, throughout all the events, Aisha is constantly caught between a very real threat and the well-being of Haruhime. Next change occurs when Aisha was berating Belle. He has a small moment as he looks at Haruhime. Allow me to quote, "She's not looking, she's not listening, only doing her best to hide inside Aisha's embrace." Seeing her like that makes something snap inside my heart. Prosties are meant to be destroyed. And then Bell questions why he had the thought. Just another reminder of how deep Haruhime's status is affecting Bell, and just detailing his moment of weakness. It's a very ugly moment for the kid, and he is constantly struggling with it. But you don't really get that sense in the anime. Okay, now we enter episode 9 material, the worst change I found in the episode. Here's a scene of Bell ruminating in his thoughts. What do you get out of this scene? What are Bell's conclusions? Oh, that Haruhime is not a symbol of destruction? Okay. And oh, Bell is reminded of his yearning to be a hero because of Argonaut's light? Okay, cool. Here's the thing. Bell is not strong enough to come to this conclusion by himself. He has not worked out his problems at this stage in the game. What's happening here is that the anime is grossly simplifying Bell. Here's what happens in all that time in the novel. Bell acknowledges that Mikoto is suffering, stuck between Haruhime and the Familia, much like Bell is. Bell pleads to a higher power to give him insight, whether it be deity, fairy, or person. He then tries to visualize a conversation with his grandfather, trying to remember every single thing he could about dear old granddad. He then imagines his grandfather saying, "Can't save one little lady? You call yourself a man?" Then he has this very interesting thought. Decide, just decide already. Being made fun of, being laughed at, pointed at, that's not shameful. The most shameful thing is to be at a crossroads and not be able to make up your mind. So I'll point you first to that last bit. Ain't it interesting that when Bell is at a crossroads of weighing his family against one girl, what he's thinking about is how people would view him and not possible dangers or ramifications for his decision? Think about why Bell would bring that up in this context, after you just talked about saving this little girl. My most extreme inference is that Bell is still very much hung up on Haruhime's status, and at this stage, it sounds like he's accepted the perceived stigma of going this far for the so-called symbol of destruction, instead of just accepting Haruhime as she is. And rest assured, you'll see proof of this thought later, that he is still hung up on this whole thing. But it is also very likely that he is just speaking in general. Like, that's probably the more likely inference, that he was just making a general broad statement. Now, you may say that the anime might have maintained some of the feel of these lines later in the episode when Bell was going towards the tower, but that inner monologue was taken from a few pages after this moment. It is important to note though, by this time, thanks to the extra little encouragement from his grandfather, Bell is ready to be the one who reaches out to save Haruhime, whether or not she is a lady of the night. Anyway, what this does is that it removes Bell's deep-seated character flaws, those being his over-reliance on deity and his fixation with heroic myth, and instead replaces it with some flashbacks and the Argonaut light. But yo, I still got some big changes. Right after this, in the anime, Bell says he'll leave Orario with everyone. In the novel, he resolves to leave by himself, which kind of changes the dynamics of the scene, kind of makes this seem like this is a bigger deal. And right after that, Bell has a very interesting thought process. Bell spends 14 lines or so talking about eyes, and how he wants to be a man worthy of her attention. And then he talks about that if he fails here, he could never do that. This is important because even though you have Bell doing so much for a girl, it reaffirms that Bell is still wholly and firmly devoted to Eyes, and is another instance of reaffirming his desire to be with Eyes. This is a pretty interesting nuance. To go so far for someone while pining for another, which just reiterates Bell's purity, which Ishtar will later comment on, and reinforces why he's having such a hard time with Haruhime's status. Now, this is a pretty interesting nuance. Usually when you have a male anime character going so far for a female anime character, people are going to think there's some feeling in there, but no, this is just Bell trying to be a hero. Anyway, this scene connects to the scene where Ishtar finds out about Bell's skills. It's unfortunate that the anime decided to remove it. Anyway, Bell's the guy that got shafted the most, so obviously he has the most changes being applied. And to some degree, there's no way around that because of how DanMachi tells its story. A lot of the info is locked in the narrator's voice, and there's no real easy way to convey that info. So next, I'm just going to show you the last interesting Bell change. So the fun thing about this one is that this line actually also happens word for word in the novel. So why am I bringing it up? Well, this is the line that precedes this line. He even forgot that he was confronting a deity. His voice erupted in unbridled fury. Why? Why did you make her become a prosty? Man, I feel so bad like ruining the intensity of the situation. Anyway, this does not look like unbridled fury. And yes, it was all caps in the novel. Now mind you, he did have other flare-ups in the anime, but those flare-ups were documented in the novel as well. This flare-up though was specifically important if you couldn't tell because of the caps lock. Because it tells you the kid is still very much hung up on the whole situation of Haruhime's status. He hasn't gotten over it, and then the narrator confirms this disposition. Here is a later line. This line would have happened right where Belle is saying Haruhime is suffering because of it. The next immediate line is in reference to how Ishtar treats her familia. He had said, even so, even if that's true, there are people suffering because of it. Belle stood tall, squaring his shoulders at Ishtar as he unleashed a booming voice, demanding that she release Haruhime from the life of a prosty, from being an object of destruction. Big thing here is that the story reiterates the object of destruction rhetoric and gives the reader the insight that this is still how Belle is viewing Haruhime and the situation. The big point that you have to take away from this is that Belle is exceedingly fixated with this problem. But no worries, this makes sense with his character, and we'll find that out through Ishtar. And with that, let's transition into Ishtar, and we'll use this same scene. The anime dropped some lines of dialogue and narration that really made this a much more nuanced scene when you were reading it. For instance, Ishtar initially spoke of how well treated Haruhime was, talking about how she gave her beautiful clothes and had delicious food. You know, she also had nice shelter. And then she also mentioned that she had the opportunity to experience the pleasures of being a woman. This line originally segued into Belle's outburst because when he was hearing this, he was just getting angry based on what he had seen from Haruhime. The story also notes how after listening to Ishtar's point of view, he realizes that mortals and gods have different points of view, and the narrator, which in all fairness is the third person narrator and not Belle himself, says that the ladies of the night may be an irreplaceable part of society and maybe aren't abhorrent outcasts at all. The value here is the harshness of the language. Now, in all fairness, again, it is the third person narrator saying this, but usually the narrator's words are tied into the line of thought that Belle is at. Anyway, the value of this conversation was that it painted the perspective that a goddess of love would have on the carnal act, while highlighting that Ishtar was overlooking basic pains that Belle could easily see. From the way that Ishtar talks, you take away that Ishtar doesn't care about people being uncomfortable if they're otherwise pretty set up. This part of the conversation also dived into the risks of being in a familia, because if you ended up with a dangerous god, they could quite literally force you to do anything, and this was one reason why people were careful of who they picked as their familia. Still on Ishtar, the novel also gave more insight into the Freya-Ishtar conflict, detailing how Ishtar was madly jealous, which we can clearly see, but how in contrast, Freya didn't care. This info came right before we saw Freya mobilizing. What this moment did was that it gave insight into Freya's inner workings. Usually, Freya would find Ishtar's provocations as no better than jokes, just things to laugh off, but this time, Freya noted that Ishtar went too far and went as far as calling the turn of events deplorable and saying that Ishtar crossed the line. Point is, this was the biggest reaction Ishtar ever got out of Freya. Did the anime convey that? No, not really. Back to Ishtar, you gotta know, Ishtar has a really bad inferiority complex, so much so that by the time she learns of Belle's skill, she pretty much envisions snapping the kid's neck. When she steps on her pipe in the anime, know that she's imagining Belle's neck under her foot. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is so that you know that Ishtar had a really bad reaction, and so that I could segue into why she had a bad reaction to Belle and his skill. The anime doesn't do a really good job of detailing Belle's skill here, calling it crystallized emotions and whatnot. Here's why Ishtar got so severely offended that she was frozen in awe by Belle. Ishtar learned that Belle had such a powerful will that it created skills. A will strong enough that it allowed him to grow from sheer desire, which led her to conclude that Belle had a one-track mind that comes around once in a millennium. And then the story reveals that the unintended side effect is that Belle is immune to divine charms, which was a big deal because there is no one immune to charm. No humans, no monsters, not even gods. Ultimately, Ishtar broke when she realized that Belle was too pure to be true, and this infuriated her. There cannot be anyone in the world that is allowed to resist her. Poor Belle. But there's the thing. Belle's problems throughout this book and throughout what this episode tried to adapt are consistent with what Ishtar finds out at the very end. The reason that Belle has such a big problem with Haruhime's status is because of his innate one-track mind purity. He's really bothered by this because that's just what his character is. Belle's character is a character full of vulnerabilities that can be easily exploited and challenged when he encounters the dark parts of the world, but it is all consistent given what was created in the story, given how the story was written. And all those moments that the anime missed, Belle struggling with Haruhime, Belle struggling with what he needed to do, Belle remembering Eyes and doing this in a way for Eyes while also helping Haruhime, then his skill as a manifestation of all of that is linked and all of that makes sense, but that is a sensation that you will not get in the anime. Anyway, those are the big changes. All things considered, Mikoto is the one that comes out mostly unscathed. I think her worst changes are the lack of her disdain for the ninja stuff and the fact that she fell off the tower. In the anime, that was very stupid to watch. At least in the novel, she was flung off the tower due to her explosion. That's significantly better, makes way more sense, because otherwise the girl in the anime just looks like she's... let's not even say it. Anyway, those were the big changes, like I said. There were, of course, tons of small changes, but they're so inconsequential that I didn't feel the need to point them out here. In terms of characters that got shafted, overall, Belle is at the very top, followed by Freya, given that her scene was significantly butchered. Then Aisha, because they didn't really tell you why Aisha was conflicted. And then maybe Ishtar at the end. And also special note to the powers and abilities. Belle's skill got shafted. They didn't tell you exactly what was going on with it. And also they didn't specify Ishtar's own charm and the degree to which it worked. That means, you know, charm works on anyone looking at any part of Ishtar's body, things like that. They didn't tell you any of that. So yeah, that's kind of like the ranking of who got shafted the most here. Anyway, guys, this video has been a long time coming. I hope you guys enjoy it. And yeah, till next time, I hope you have a great day. And hey, if you like the video, please leave a like. If you want to share it around, share it around. It's a beefy video, but I know you guys that wanted to see the differences detailed. I hope you enjoyed this one. Anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.